You won't believe how fast the cops showed up at my house, all because I dared to drain my own pool. It was one of those clear, bright Saturday mornings, the kind where the sun hits just right, and all you can think about is getting some work done around the house before the afternoon laziness sets in. My backyard pool had been long overdue for maintenance. The water had turned cloudy, with bits of leaves floating on the surface and a faint green tint creeping in that just screamed, "Clean me." So, I decided it was time after months of putting it off. I rolled up my sleeves, grabbed my tools, and started draining the pool. Now, to be clear, draining the pool in our neighborhood is completely legal. I double-checked the HOA guidelines, the city ordinances, and even called the local utilities to make sure I was following every rule. As long as the water didn't flood into someone else's yard or onto public streets in large amounts, and as long as I wasn't dumping chemicals into the storm drains, I was fine. I had everything set up properly, hoses running into the proper drainage lines, filters in place, all the responsible homeowner stuff. But in HOA land, apparently, common sense doesn't always matter when someone's got a personal vendetta. Enter Brenda, the self-appointed queen of our HOA board. If you've ever lived in a neighborhood with an HOA, you've probably met a Brenda like ours. Early 50s, always lurking near the front windows, walking her tiny yappy dog at least 6 times a day just to scope out other people's lawns, always ready with her phone in hand to snap a photo of the tiniest infraction. And somehow, despite no official title beyond board member, she wields her clipboard and passive-aggressive smile like she's the sheriff of the entire subdivision. I should have known draining the pool wouldn't go unnoticed. About an hour into the process, as the water level started dipping below halfway, I heard that telltale sound, the crunch of sandals on gravel, her tiny dog barking its head off. I looked up, and sure enough, Brenda was standing right outside my backyard fence, peering through the slats like a nosy detective. She didn't say anything at first. She just stood there, arms crossed, squinting like she was calculating how many HOA violations she could slap me with in one go. I gave her a polite nod and went back to my work, figuring she'd eventually get bored and leave. No such luck. A few minutes later, she let herself through the side gate, which, by the way, is not okay, and marched straight into my yard. No hello, no knocking, just full-on trespassing with her phone recording in one hand. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded, her voice sharp enough to slice through concrete. I set the hose down calmly and explained what I was doing, pointing out that I had checked every rule and that everything was above board. Brenda wasn't having it. "You can't just dump all that water into the sewer. You're destroying the neighborhood's infrastructure. That's hazardous waste," she barked, clearly not understanding the basic concept of swimming pool maintenance. I stayed calm, reiterating the steps I'd taken and offering to show her the permits and guidelines I had printed out just in case someone asked. I even pointed out how the hose was filtering the water properly and draining safely into the designated line, nowhere near anyone's property. But Brenda, being Brenda, was already on her phone, dramatically punching numbers into the keypad and telling me she was calling the cops. "You're going to be fined for this. I'm reporting you for dumping toxic chemicals into the public drains," she said loudly, pacing back and forth like she was orchestrating a sting operation. Now, I wasn't nervous again. I knew I'd done everything right, but I'll admit, it's never fun when someone threatens to involve the police, especially over something as mundane as draining a pool. Still, I figured the cops would show up, take one look at the setup, realize nothing illegal was happening, and leave. I underestimated just how dramatic Brenda could make the situation sound. 15 minutes later, 2 squad cars pulled up in front of my house, lights flashing, no sirens. You could practically hear the curtains flutter in windows all around the neighborhood as the spectators peeked out to see what scandal was unfolding on their quiet street. The officers were polite but serious as they walked into the backyard, with Brenda hot on their heels, practically bouncing with excitement like she'd just won a prize. "This is the homeowner," she told them before I could even speak. "He's dumping dangerous chemicals into the public drains. This is an environmental hazard. I demand he be fined and the HOA be notified immediately." One of the officers turned to me and asked for an explanation. I calmly laid out the entire situation, how I was draining the pool in accordance with city regulations, how the water was being properly filtered, and how I had all the documentation to prove it. I even handed them the printed out guidelines from the HOA and city website. The officers took their time reviewing everything. They walked over to inspect the drainage setup, checked the water flow, and even called the city utilities department just to confirm I was following protocol. After about 20 minutes, one of the officers came back over, handed me my papers, and gave me a small nod. "You're good," he said. "Everything checks out. You're not violating any laws here." Brenda's jaw practically hit the ground. She tried to protest, her voice rising higher and higher, but the officers cut her off gently, explaining that no crime had been committed and that they had no reason to intervene further. I figured that would be the end of it, but Brenda wasn't ready to walk away with her pride wounded. "This is against HOA rules. He can't do this without board approval. I'm going to file a formal complaint and have him fined for damaging community property," she huffed, spinning on her heel and storming out of the yard, her little dog yapping furiously in tow. The officers gave me a sympathetic smile, apologized for the inconvenience, and left. But the story didn't end there. By Monday morning, I had an official letter from the HOA in my mailbox, not surprisingly signed by Brenda herself, claiming that I had violated community guidelines by improperly disposing of hazardous water materials. She was trying to slap me with a $500 fine. I wasn't about to let that slide. I gathered all my documentation, including a copy of the police report stating no violation had occurred, and requested a formal hearing with the HOA board. At the hearing, Brenda tried her best to twist the facts, painting me as a reckless homeowner who endangered the neighborhood's safety. But when I laid out the hard evidence, including the city's confirmation and the officer's report clearing me of any wrongdoing, her argument crumbled fast. Other board members, who had no love for Brenda's power-hungry antics, sided with me quickly. The fine was dismissed, and I got an official letter clearing my name. The best part? Brenda's stunt didn't go unnoticed. Several of my neighbors who had witnessed the drama and who were just as tired of Brenda's constant overreach started attending HOA meetings more regularly. A few months later, during the annual board elections, Brenda lost her position. The neighborhood finally got a little quieter, and I finished refilling my pool without further drama. So yeah, draining my pool nearly got me arrested, but in the end, it drained something even better: Brenda's reign of terror over our HOA. And you can bet the next time I clean my pool, I'll make sure to invite a few neighbors over, just in case Brenda decides to show up with her phone again. Because sometimes, standing up to entitled people not only clears your name, it makes the whole community a little better off. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever faced something like this? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story moved you, or made you angry, or made you think, then please like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe. Real stories like this deserve to be heard.